This video is sponsored by KEH Camera. YouTube, what is good? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Lomography 100 film. I went on vacation last month in June and I decided to bring a 3-pack of Lomography 100 film with me. It was affordable, it was available, and I saw it on the shelf at the film shop and I was like, you know what? Let's cop a little pack. I ended up actually shooting one roll of this during my vacation, but then of course, when I got back to New York, I took it out on the streets for some street portraits as well. Let's check out some of the images I created with this here. So the roll I shot in Sweden was actually shot on my Yashica 124G matte. And then the other two rolls, the ones I shot in New York City, were shot on my Hasselblad 500C with the 80mm Zeiss lens. And it was really interesting shooting with this film. I think first and foremost, shooting ISO 100 film just isn't what I typically do, and therefore using that in certain situations felt a little bit strange. It's actually great in the summertime, obviously, because ISO 100 means you can shoot a bit more wide open on your lens, especially when doing portraits, and you want that beautiful environmental bokeh of medium format. But the challenge in Sweden, in the photos that you saw there, was those are actually during golden hour, leaning into the sunset and of course to dusk. And actually they were probably more right at sunset and dusk. So 100 ISO was really tough. These photos aren't as sharp as you would want them to be, because I shot at 2.8 and the lenses are always the least sharp at most wide open. And then additionally, there's probably a little bit of motion blur there because my shutter speeds were probably pretty slow. Let's say 1/15 of a second or something like that. Not ideal for shooting with low light. And we already know that, but I did it anyways because when I went hiking that particular day in Sweden, that's the film that I brought, so I used it. But shooting portraits on ISO 100 film is actually pretty awesome because you can shoot, at all of the kind of daylight hours and really open up your lens to whatever the maximum is. I shot on medium format, but even if you do this on 35mm, especially with some of those lenses on 35, you could shoot probably at 1.4 if you want on those really good lenses and still have full access of your shutter speeds and not really need to use any neutral density or anything like that. So that's pretty cool with ISO 100. Specific to this Lomography film, I'm actually very impressed by the results. I did shoot on medium format, so my experience is more skewed towards that, but we'll talk about 35mm as well. On medium format, this film honestly feels like a professional quality film. And what I mean by that is that you get a lot of really good color. It seems like there's reasonable dynamic range in the images as well. And then additionally, the images are sharp. ISO 100 film you expect to be sharp, and I think this film delivers that on medium format. There is some visible grain here, but I think it's really nice actually. It's not the kind that kind of takes away or instantly adds this like texture on your film. It's something very subtle and it's kind of in the background. It's usually something you'll notice on your midtones and shadows. I really like it, and I was very impressed by that. In terms of colors, the film has a relatively neutral look. However, in my scans, and I did all my scans with Negative Lab Pro and with camera scanning, in my scans, the color red really popped. It's very evident here in these images of the firefighters. Just look at the reds in here. And just in general, the exposures here, they're so clean, they feel very neutral, but then the reds just really punch you in the face. So I really enjoyed that. And I think that lends itself well to most skin tones. This isn't like Ektar, where sometimes the skin tones kind of go wild, especially on lighter skin people. But with Lomo 100, I think that the red, that hue, that specific kind of color in the skin, the blood that's under your skin, I actually think this film lends itself well to that. So I'd recommend this film to anybody doing portraits. I think this is a fine film, and as long as you've got enough light, I think you're gonna get really good exposures. Your shadows aren't gonna be muddy or anything like that, and the colors are gonna have a nice little hint to them. They're not gonna really go crazy, but that red especially is gonna pop nicely. I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, KEH. Buying used camera gear is amazing because you as a consumer get what you want, and you get it without creating new waste streams by buying brand new products. And fortunately, KH is a great place to buy used cameras because you get such great products and you get really amazing service as well. They review and grade each and every single camera, allowing you to choose whatever option suits your budget best. You will know exactly what condition your equipment is before buying it. Make sure to use the links down below in order to support this channel. And there's a couple links down there for an extra 5% off as well. Enjoy camera shopping. So in general, on medium format, this film is a no-brainer. The price is right. It's relatively easy to find. I feel like Lomo 100 is not what people are buying on medium format. Everybody wants Portra 400, Portra 800, and maybe Lomo 400 as well. But Lomo 100, if you've got the light, definitely go get it because it's a good bargain. And bargain is relative, of course, because all prices are higher nowadays. On 35mm, I actually haven't shot this film on 35, but I did do some research. I did kind of a quick scan on Instagram for the Lomography 100 hashtag to see what other people are creating. And it's kind of a mixed bag there. I think there's a couple things contributing to the mixed results that you see. Obviously, people are scanning differently. Everybody's using different labs and that kind of thing. A lot of people, especially more amateur people, are probably underexposing this film, especially if they're shooting on a point-and-shoot camera and doing kind of all automatic stuff. So when you underexpose this film, especially on a negative of that size, on 35mm, you're gonna really see some of those things that you might not like. Some people think it's cool to have underexposed images, and there's a kind of a nice kind of thing to that in terms of the look, the aesthetic. But it all depends on what your preference is. But this film in 35mm, you really want to make sure you expose it properly. And you also probably want to avoid some really high dynamic range scenes. So if you're shooting right into the bright sky with everything else in shadow, that's probably going to be really tough. And that's, I think, happens to most film, honestly. So you definitely want to expose to your shadows with this film to really help the shadows get as much light as possible. But there's a couple examples here, people who seem to have exposed really well and also scanned these really well. And the images look very detailed and sharp. And this is from Instagram, which obviously compresses the hell out of the images. But if they look good on Instagram, then that means they're going to look good when you put them on a real good screen or when you print them. So I'd still say if you are going to shoot on 35mm, more for travel and for your own personal enjoyment, I would definitely recommend this film because the price is good. And you're probably going to find this film nowadays it's not gonna be that difficult to find it, is what I'm trying to say. It seems like in general, film is easier to find now than it was a year ago. So definitely check that film out on 35mm because I think you're gonna like the images you can create on it. With a good lens and good lighting and proper use of the film in terms of exposure, you're gonna get some really good colors. You're still gonna get that kind of neutral, soft look, but the reds are gonna pop, and there is much more visible grain, of course, because the image is smaller. Therefore, when you kind of blow it up more, that grain is going to be much more present. But that's to expect from Lomography 100. This is not marketed as a pro quality film, and therefore there's probably some reasons why, and that's probably one of them. But really good film to use, and now that I make this video, not having used 35mm, I really want to go get some because I think I'm going to enjoy using it, especially doing some street portraits, shooting wide open as possible on my lenses to really get that nice bokeh in the background, but then also really kind of use this film to its maximum capability. So of course I jumped in the darkroom with this film. I actually only printed one image because I ran out of time in the darkroom. I was juggling a bunch of different prints. But let's check this one out. Let's take a look at the prints that I made of the Lomo 100. There's actually only one we're going to take a look at today. I didn't have enough time in the darkroom, but I still went ahead and made one print here, and I really think you're going to enjoy looking at this one. Got a couple copies there, but we'll check this one out. This print, of course, is of that guy that I just showed you that stuck his tongue out at me. Pretty interesting guy. He was walking around the park and he kind of noticed me in the squad, and then we started chatting. When I asked for his portrait, he was like, "Are you FBI?" And I was like, "Nah, man, do I look like FBI?" And I'm sure that's what every FBI agent says. But anyways, we laughed about it, and then eventually he started making faces at me, and I was like, wait a minute, that's exactly what I want you to do. And so I told him to do it again. And he stuck his tongue out at me, and then I got him with the macro filter on the lens and got in as close as I could with the 1.0 macro filter. And actually, this probably isn't as close as I could because I still wanted to keep some of the background, but got him pretty close, and a really interesting portrait. My reflection here serves as his kind of pupils, which is really interesting. That's the actual lens of the Hasselblad that you see in there. But yeah, you know, he's got his teeth. That's a really interesting detail. His tongue has texture, which of course is a little off-putting, but also interesting at the same time. And then the giant beard. I love this print, and the Lomo looks fantastic here. Here you can see that the colors are nice and kind of calm. There is a nice red tonality on his skin, and as I said, you know, the red kind of pops in a lot of these images. So anywhere where there's red, you're gonna see a bit more saturation compared to the other colors. But yeah, it went a little bit warm on here. As you can see in the sky, it's not perfectly blue-white. It's got a little bit of additional kind of hue there. And yeah, I just like how the Lomo checks out here. On medium format, the Lomo looks amazing. It looks very high-end. It looks very professional. And if anybody's looking to make work with that film, I definitely recommend it because you're gonna get really good results. And the film really, at that size at least, the images that you get, the negatives really give you nice and polished images. I mean, you're looking here, this is kind of the shadow area. Look for the grain, and there's just a subtle hint of grain here. It's definitely not pristine. This doesn't look digital at all, but there's a little bit of texture that I think adds something really nice. So definitely recommend it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about Lomography 100. Lomography films in general are very capable films. I'm specifically talking here about 100, 400, and 800. If you are a serious shooter and you really want to control your results and try to get the best results possible, in medium format, you can't go wrong with any of those three options. And I think in 35mm, as long as you're very careful about your exposure, you're gonna get really beautiful images, and they're gonna have that classic kind of film texture to them in terms of seeing some of that grain, and then, you know, just a slight hint of like a color shift here or there, but like in a good way. Definitely give these films a shot. I know Lomography is known for a lot of their more unique films where they're messing with the colors, or there's all these interesting things happening with the film during the development. These three films are not that. 100, 400, and 800, these are all quote-unquote regular films, and you would put these up right next to the Kodak Portraits line, the Fuji Pro 400H line, and also, of course, Vision 3 film. These are all very usable, and they're clean enough to get you really nice quality results. All right, y'all, that's it for today. Till the next video, I'm out.